Hey, so here's kind of what I was talking about before, right? We have the hourly resetting on a lot. We have Sol here resetting on the hourly. You'll see um, Bitcoin is doing her hourly reset here, right? So the hourly model is getting really low on the Stoke here and starting a bounce. So this bounce based on the hourly reset is going to be really telling. If this hourly reset bounce, right, we start to turn up on the Stoke and we see the price turn up. As the price turns up, if we get a nice big bounce, we could go hyper bullish on the 4 hour. And if we get a small bounce, then we're probably going to get a small bounce up and then we're going to go down even further. This is exactly what I've been talking about all day long. That's exactly what I was expecting. So I'm entering into some trades here. I'm going to make a short-term trade. I already have a long-term position on Sol, for instance, but I'm going to make a short-term play on Sol by entering right here. You'll see we're just starting to turn up, right? So if I were to do something like this, I could place my stop loss below the prior bottom, right? So that's only 1.8% below my entry. Maybe I'll just call it 2% below my entry. So worst case scenario, if we go down further, I'm going to lose 2% on the trade. But if we can hold here and go up a little higher, I can make a nice little profit on this bounce based purely on the hourly. See what happened last time, right? Last time, look at the Stoke. Top to bottom, right? So if you look right here, we had the top of the price action. Thank you very much. We had the top of the price action right here. That came back down as the Stoke came back down. And then we had a nice big bounce up on the Stoke here. And bottom to top, big bounce up on the price here. Then we had this correction on the price right there. As the price came back down, we saw the Stoke come back down. Now the Stoke is resetting. So it's exactly the pattern we've had with the Stoke model going up and down with that repeating pattern, that wave structure. So by entering right here, I can get a tight stop loss, right? So if I do this, place my stop loss, 2%, I could even go tighter. Look at this, 1.5. I can make it really tight. Worst case scenario, I lose 1.5 to 2% of my investment. So I'll probably meet in the middle here. I'm going to go about 1.8. So I'm going to enter right here on Sol, place a stop loss 1.8% below my entry. And if you missed out on my big run, because I had a really, really accurate analysis here where I got back in, not this most recent run, even from the bottom, I called this breakout flawlessly, and it was up 42% at the top. So if you wanted to get into a long-term play, you certainly could. You can enter long-term right now on Sol. It's not as good as my early entry, obviously, but this is a potential entry. This is more of a short-term trade because I'm talking about the short-term move up. I wouldn't get into a big long-term position here, but if you wanted to enter long-term, you could. I mean, I guess the daily Stoke's kind of high, so it's probably not the best time to get into this one, at least. As a long-term thing, it's probably better to wait and see what happens over the next cycle if we get a larger long-term dip. But again, short term, really good position to jump in. Even if we don't go hyper bullish on the 4 hour and we come down further, we should get a little bounce here long enough that I can move my stop loss up to my entry. That makes it a risk-free trade. So if it does come back down, worst case scenario, I break even, right? Some of my other setups, Link is already bouncing based on that hourly. This one might be too late to get into a short-term play on Link. I'd probably stay out there. But some of the other setups might potentially be in a position to enter in. Like the hourly, for instance, on FIL looks really good. We have the EMAs clustered together. Let's see what the 4 hour looks like. 4 hour, same thing as Sol. It's starting to turn back down, indicating we're going to get a bigger correction here. But since the hourly is starting to bounce and everything is most likely going to follow Bitcoin to an extent, we at least have 4, 6, 8 hours of breathing room where we could buy in right now. And then over the next several hours into the evening, we could decide whether or not to move our stop loss up to our entry, move our stop loss up to lock in profit. And if it looks like it's going to get a small bounce and come down further, you could take that small profit by closing out the position, walking away with a nice little gain, and then wait until it comes down again before you buy back in. Either way, it's a good time to get in with that hourly reset, and then you could decide what the next step is further down the road. ADA right here is back to my original entry plan, so this would be a good time to potentially jump into ADA. The hourly is starting to turn up. If you were to do this right here, I was talking about this earlier in my earlier video, buying ADA right here after this short-term dip based on the hourly with the hourly Stoke getting really low is great because you could buy in, you could place your stop loss down here below the prior bottom over here, right? And then your stop loss is 2.5% below your entry. Worst case scenario, you lose 2.5% of your investment capital. But best case scenario, you break out from here, we push up, get above the Ichimoku cloud, and test this trendline resistance. Break above that trendline resistance, you get a big breakout, but at the very least, if it pushes up to this white line, that trendline resistance, at the very least, you're going to get a 3% profit. Then you could close and take the profit, or at the very least, you move your stop loss up to your entry price. Then it's a risk-free trade, because even if it comes crashing down, worst case scenario, you just lose your original investment. You just lose your profit, and you end up breaking even, right? So yeah, there could be some other setups that are similar to that. RSR might be a good time with that lower hourly stoke. Get into RSR and potentially ride that up. Although RSR doesn't look as good on the hourly model, so there might be some better choices. What does SXP look like now on the hourly? Really low stoke could be a good time. It does have to break up into the cloud though, which could be troublesome. UTK I was looking at earlier, and I thought that might be a good one. The hourly doesn't give us a clean model though. How about KSM? KSM starting to turn up, bouncing right on the 55. I think I'm going to make a play on KSM actually, because she's bouncing right on the 55 EMA, which is one of my key supports. That's my Ichima dynamic support. So if I do this, look, if I buy right here, my stop loss goes right at the prior bottom, right here, just below that 55 EMA. As we're seeing that turn up on the hourly stoke, worst case scenario, I lose 1%. So this would be an example of a low risk trade. I buy in here, it bounces up, move my stop loss up to my entry, making it a risk-free trade. If it does crash and I'm wrong, worst case, I lose 1% of my investment because I have such a tight, well-placed stop loss. And if it does give us a nice solid bounce, we could make a nice little profit. The 4 hours in a similar position on some of the other alts, but with KSM, it's getting down pretty low, so this doesn't look like one that's about to start a new 4-hour retrace. This might be in a good position to get into a bigger move up. So KSM is a good buy here. Initially, it's a good low-risk setup because we have that tight stoke, that tight stop loss. And just to show you, look here. See when it bounced on the 55 EMA this time too? If you bought in as it bounced the 55 EMA right as the stoke turned up, notice what happened. We went on a nice big bounce, and that held perfectly. So if you were to buy in right now, again, right on the 55 EMA, you can enter in. Your stop loss goes below the 55 EMA, so that EMA is there to protect your stop loss. You're in a great position to make some money on a low risk entry. In this particular case, I'd set my stop loss a little lower. 1% is just too tight. It's just crazy because a tiny little wick down could hit your stop loss, then you miss out. So in this case, you're probably better off going down, putting your stop loss about 1.5% below your entry. That way there's a little bit more leeway. If a quick dip or wick comes down and slightly touches below the 55 EMA, you don't want to get stopped out. I'm going to make this trade right now, place my stop loss 1.5% below my entry. So if you guys want to make the same trade, just feel free to do so. Make sure you take what I said into consideration and don't have your stop loss unnecessarily tight. 1.5% is much better than 1%. In theory, you could put your stop loss all the way down here, 2.5, 2.75% below your entry. That way the 99 EMA and the top of the cloud is there to protect you as well. I might enter into a mid to long-term hold on KSM where I place the stop loss a little bit lower, but for now I'm going to try that really tight stop loss option. All right, I'll touch base with you guys in a bit, but that's where we are for now. I'm starting to enter a couple trades, but I'm being careful because we have that 4-hour model on the altcoin suggesting we come back down. I don't want to get too aggressive here. Let's see what happens with this hourly bounce and how much momentum we're able to build up. If we don't go up very much on this hourly bounce, it may be a sign that we do have to come lower. Remember that. So make sure if you're entering trades now, you're not going to sleep right away and you're available over the next 4, 6, 8 hours to potentially move your stop loss up or close out those positions if it looks like it's necessary. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll talk to you on the next update.